I think last week's recording pooted out again. It's like 2 weeks in a row. I apologize, but I'll try it one more time. It works on all my other classes during the week, but for some reason, I don't know, it must be doing something wrong. All right, so I'm gonna make some notes for anyone who needs them. All right, so remember that when you're doing people here, one of the things that you want to do is identify where your horizon is. So if your horizon is here and your vanishing points are here, anytime you got one of these guys going to a vanishing point, they should be the same height. So these guys look like they might be close. It's hard to get one sitting and measure. But it looks like they're kind of close. For this guy here, if you wanted to make sure that he was the right height, then go back to the vanishing point and then continue these lines out until they intersect. So that looks okay. This guy looks okay, but that's just a really nice way to double check it, right? Everyone get that? So, and you see that in some of the examples that I've been showing you. All of these are characters because your head, your body, your feet, this guy's only like 3¼ heads tall. So you're in a cartoon world. That's okay. I would have preferred you studying the human form as it was more of a real life proportion. So that's your next step. All right, let me clear this. I think it's technically correct. You got a tree that's working. That's good. I see that there's texture in this wood on the facade, which means that this looks unfinished. And so the building on the right looks unfinished. And because you've got an interior space in here, you might want to investigate what some of these interior shapes might look like. Maybe there's a counter in there and this is a fish market, right? So that's one thing that you can explore, making that one better. All right, thank you, Victor. Lauren, squeaky bat.
Yep.
Okay, vanishing points. So again, I'm just gonna sketch for you. I think everything is fine. Your line weights are just a little scratchy, but that's okay. One thing that you really, 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 really could have done to make this more awesome is that if I just extend this line out and this line back, that means this is where this vanishing point is. And your other vanishing point is here. This is okay, but I think that your whole composition could have been better if your vanishing point was stretched out even further. So it just there was a thing that I posted. I'm not sure if let me see if I posted it for everyone because I found it this week. Storyboard. I might not have posted it. No, there was a thing that I had found describing what your camera view looks like. All right, Lauren, what is this shape right here?
That's the corner of the building. It's got cracks in it.
Oh, so this is a broken down building.
Yeah.
Okay, so once again, what I'm going to do is just give everyone that same idea that, oh, sorry. That I think your line weights are and are a little heavy. So remember this little key right here. What you want to do, and I think I've drawn this for all of you before at least once, is you start out with the basic geometry, and that anything that's low, anything that's on the bottom gets a heavier line. Anything that's close to the camera gets a heavier line. And then remember too that sometimes the lines don't have to continue. They don't have to connect all the way around. And so if I switch this to an eraser, it's like, oh, it's erasing too much. My eraser's too big, but you don't have to like, the lines don't have to, if the line is going to be really fine line in the background, it can be a little less heavy. So the example would be is that these lines down here should have been really, really heavy. And instead, this one, like on the left, it's really light. And you can tell just by what I'm doing that it helps your composition just with those two lines. And then this crack, I think that what you've established is that there's a thickness to this wall. And I think that as much as possible, you should continue to show the viewer the thickness in that wall. And then what is this?
Oh, it's just another like hole in the wall.
Oh, it's another hole. So is this the hole?
Yeah.
So what you should do is make this heavier. And then these should just be cracks. And if this is a hole, then make that heavier. And you can see that just by the way that those lines are falling in there, it helps just automatically. And then because this is behind it, you might want to just scrub in a little darkness. And the same thing here, if this is a hole in the wall, then give the rest of the wall that's existing some sort of dimension. This part too, you might see a little bit of dimension right there. Just that line right there is going to help the viewer understand that it's a broken wall. And then if you have broken walls, you really should have rubble, right? And maybe even like the caution tape, right? All right, thank you, Lauren, AKA Squeaky Bat. Okay, Annika, very nice. Very, very good study here. Yeah, the only thing that I can really comment on, well, there's a couple of things that I can comment on. And one is what I just talked about, the heaviness of the lines on the bottom. And so for this one, I think that what you might want to try is, even though it's a minor detail almost, but you're almost obligated to try it, is a thickness to this sidewalk. You get this, and again, the zoom thing is kind of hard to draw in, but that's okay. So, get a heavier line underneath that sidewalk there. All right, so you do have a vanishing point in the middle here, but you're technically not using it anywhere. These lines on the street need to go over here. So this line, these little stripes in the road need to go to that vanishing point, like that. And then these lines over here need to go to this vanishing point. See that? So those need to be adjusted. And then you also might want to divide them up and make it so that there's a thick line on the road where the end of the corner is. It's just to indicate to the cars that that's where the stop line is. And then maybe not have the second one back there. And also maybe treat this line just a little differently so that the viewer understands that it's paint on the road and not just lines in the drawing. You know, your tree is good, you're not in trouble, but I think that one thing that might really help is if you really strengthen the lines that make up the exterior, or at least some of the exterior shapes here, because it's in front. The rule is that if it's in front, it should have a heavier line. And if it's on the bottom, it should have a heavier line. So one way to get it to pop is to just get that tree to have a stronger sense of line to it. It's the thing in the foreground. Same thing with this guy over here, and the lamp post as well. So that should be nice and heavy. And then, you know, go at it, and then you can like try a little shading in here just to get it to pop even a little more. All right, you okay? Fernando. Okay. Fernando, what's the first thing I'm going to say?
The tree looks bad.
What's that?
The trees look bad.
Uh-oh, hold on a second. My mouse is just really sensitive. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom out from that. Your vanishing points are way too close to the composition. You know, we talked about this last week when I was showing everyone examples that you're going to get in trouble. It's going to make it look like you're make it look like you've got a 20 to 15, maybe even a 10 millimeter lens on your camera. I think everything about it, it's good. It's technically great. But I think that what you really needed to do was get the vanishing points. This vanishing point is right here. And coming from the corner of the curb to the upper position of whatever the lines here for the top of the building are, and get that vanishing point to be like way over here. And I think that your drawing would have just been more successful in terms of a normal camera. Same thing over here. Get this vanishing point as far off. You could still keep the bottom position, but it just helps for the performance of the perspective to keep the vanishing points as far off as possible. All right, your tree is okay. I think it would have been better if you would have made it a little bigger. See, I'm just scrubbing this, right? So because you have it small, it's okay, but it would have been better if it was bigger. All right, got that, Fernando?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Noah? Okay, good. Oh, you know what? One thing, let me go backwards. Fernando, on this, your sidewalk lines are incorrect. So you set these points right here on the close side of the sidewalk, and then they need to vanish to the left vanishing point. They should not vanish to a vanishing point in the middle. And the lines over on the left should vanish to these, to the vanishing point over on the right. Okay, you got that? And remember that this clock should be a circle that's in perspective. You know, that didn't catch my eye the first time I saw it. So yeah, but your sidewalk lines are a little off. All right, the thing that I'm catching right here, Noah, is that, and I kind of mentioned this last week, just about the trunks of a tree have a taper to them. And I think that you would have been a little bit more successful here if you would have just got a little wider at the bottom of these trees. Just a little wider, just to make it a little bit more organic instead of looking kind of like architectural trees. They're not bad, but I think that this one in the foreground here could have just been a little bigger. What the heck did I do with my? I think it could have been a little bigger. It's not bad, but it could have been just a little bigger. Line weights are good. I appreciate the tone. That looks good. You got this, you got some realistic people here. And I might take issue with this guy standing in the doorway here because this looks like he's standing at a bar or something like a table that's waist high. The other figures here, they look a little off in proportion. I think it just helps with the precision to keep your humans at this point a normal proportions. Work on that circle in perspective. That little window is not quite right. All right, thank you, Noah. Chloe. Okay, very good. Let me make my mark. Okay, let me look at this vanishing point. Okay, this looks good. So, Chloe, are you using 3-point?
No, I wasn't, but I kept moving while I was drawing. So when I finally scanned it and looked at it, I realized that my lines were slanting.
Well, I think that it kind of looks like it's 3-point. I think it looks like 3-point because this line here tapers in from the edge just a little bit. And so too do these two lines. And it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. And this line here kind of gives it away too. That means that your vanishing point would be really, really, really far down, which is fine. I think that the idea there is that you've created a pretty natural look on the camera. I think you did yourself a favor by keeping the camera far away from your object. This is an example here, everyone, of the sidewalk lines lining up correctly to the left and right vanishing points. People could use a little proportions, but this is very good. Thank you, Chloe.
Thank you.
I'm thinking about the structure of this arch. Right
Yeah, I had
here.
a hard
It's like-
time with that arch in particular. I didn't know how to make it look like it was going inwards. Because I did the original, the bigger arch.
Yeah.
I did a half circle, and then I was like, I guess I could do a half circle, but I already had so many lines that I didn't know what to do
Right.
there.
So I think that you just have to decide that this is going to be a perfect circle kind of deal. And one thing that you can do when you're deciding this as an illustrator or designer or drawing artist is, you've got this idea that this thing is going to be a little exterior restaurant or something like that. And that this is going to be like an overhanging reach. I think that if you do that, you probably need a little something up here in case there's a light mist so that it can be covering the people up there. And then this arch right here, you scrub it in, you go, there's my circle, and it's going to get a little narrow there. So that's correct. But if you get in trouble, then just put some architectural thing in there, like changing the attack on it and adding in like a little decorative element right there, and maybe even like another little element right there, and then make it symmetrical. So you put like another one here, and that's not quite in the right place. But what it gives you a chance to do is to play with the main build of the arch itself, and then also play with trying to hide any inconsistencies by putting in like little architectural elements right there. You know, and I'm just jazzing this up for you here with that little overhang. You know, something like that. Okay, yeah, looks good. Marley. Okay. Okay, just I see just two things that are catching my eye, and that's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. And the first is this arch right here. So I think that your plotting is okay, but I also think that this arch, see, these are wide. And so I think that you kind of let the tree stop you, because I think that this arch right here should have just been over here. And then even though you might not see it really clearly, as you draw the other one, and then you get that arch in there too, maybe even this one. And then just by your line weight. So when you start to make this line for the tree heavier, and you're just, because it's in front, it's technically in front of this building. And so you make it heavier, and then let the lines for the arch here and here just be a little lighter so it doesn't confuse the eye. And the only other thing that's catching my eye is that you might want to start this column here and then shows a three-dimensional quality of the thickness of the building under here. Everything else looks good. Yeah, everything else looks good. All right. That was Marley. Okay. Ria. Okay, great. Excellent. Everything looks really good. I like the fun quality of your people here. And you have a natural diminishing thickness of the lines as they go away from the camera. And so these buildings right here and over here on the left are very good. They're technically correct, but what we want to see is our focal point right here. So this is great. Excellent. Nothing is catching my eye. Okay, great. Excellent. And it looks like you're having fun with it too. It's always the biggest challenge. Not okay. I can tell you all got yelled at for trying to draw trees correctly before you made a mistake. So I appreciate the tree. It looks okay. It looks very organic. The lines, the perspective all looks very good. The only thing that you really should have done, and you know what I'm going to say, is that you really should have taken this vanishing point and put it out here, and this one at least out here. Because right now your camera is just, it's squishing everything. You know what I'm, so that's the really the first thing that you missed was the planning of the lines for the vanishing points. It looks good. Other than that, it looks good. And you can say, well, I intended that, Billy. I wanted to use a small lens on my camera, but that looks good. Kai. All right, try not to show me things that are that are rotated. So make it your point to rotate that yourself. All right, so this composition would have looked a little better if you would have kept the paper in the same orientation, because right now, even though your vanishing points are technically correct, you know, I can see that they're off here and off here for your buildings. Well, this one's not quite behaving. This building would be there. I don't know if you would see the top of this building. But then your sidewalk lines need to behave to that vanishing point as well. So remember that once you start to do that, once you start to draw those lines vanishing to this vanishing point, you realize that this is way too wide of a sidewalk. And then you can just make that correction. And that these lines here on the left side need to vanish to this vanishing point. You know, and you picked it. This is correct, but the lines in the sidewalk are going to the wrong, I don't know, they're going to a vanishing point like that's here, and these are just kind of flying up into space. So you can tweak that and resubmit it. The other thing that you could do is that you should extend this road. And so that you pick the thickness of the road and this thickness of the road. And just because of the way you've drawn this, you really should see this sidewalk and maybe even something here. I think you missed oh, this is your tree? All right, yeah, you're in trouble. You know, draw me a tree. You know, get a tree in there, draw a big one over here. Remember that you should be drawing in landscape, you know, following the 16:9 composition. But you can see just by those lines right there that it would have made your composition just a little better. Oops, hold on. Randy.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, your vanishing points are too close to the edge. So one thing that you could have done here was to, instead of just trying to use your whole page here, is to really just kind of set up your window and say, this is my composition. Keep the vanishing point over here, you know, and you got paper over here, so you go with the vanishing point over here. And then when you start laying this out, go to that vanishing point. And so you're not using this part really, technically, but it gives you a better camera. And then all of a sudden you realize that your sidewalk becomes a normal sidewalk instead of like this fisheye view sidewalk. See, it's because now your sidewalk is back over here. And really you could have like taken the vanishing point off to an imaginary position here. I think that when I was doing this in the 80s in design school, the teacher had us actually tape a piece of paper underneath here, just temporarily, so that you could see where the vanishing point was exactly. And I think that that kind of loosens up your camera view. So this is kind of a cheat on these trees here. You know, I want you all practicing what it's like to lay out that tree. So that's kind of a cheat. You could fix that, right? And because there's because you have the vanishing points in the wrong place, it might be easier to just redo it. It's always faster to just redo it and try instead of trying to fix it. Rachel. All right, you did this digitally, so you have one without the lines, one with the lines. Okay, everything looks good. Yep, okay. Yeah, I'll buy it. The only thing that's kind of catching my eye is that you wanted to show off the idea of getting these square windows in perspective, and you didn't want the tree to override your drawing, but really you should have got the tree to just be a normal tree. This one could have been okay, because it just looks a little pinched. It looks a little forced that you wanted the tree to be narrow so that you could show off more of your lines. I was thinking that I wanted to see what the tree looks like. All right.
Okay.
Moses. Okay, great. I think it's interesting to have one vanishing point close, closer, and then the other one farther away. It definitely adds to the composition. Your sidewalk lines are not right. Your sidewalk line should be diminishing to the opposite vanishing points. So don't use this one. The sidewalk line should vanish to the respective vanishing points. You're in trouble. I think for one thing, the trees should not be growing in the road. The telephone pole, the light pole should not be in the road. So you might want to extend your sidewalk out just a little bit, maybe even a little bit here, and really study this tree. I'd rather see a tree in better proportion than one that looks like a guitar pick. Yeah, I don't know what that looks like. And then you copied the same thing here. So just start out by getting your trees in the right place. All right, you got those notes? Moses, you got those notes?
Yes.
All right, let me mark that. I'm going to refresh this page to see if there were, oops, hold on. Did anybody just upload that I missed?
Yeah, I just turned mine in.
Ryan?
It's not quite done, but I at least wanted to hear your feedback.
Okay. So I think you could have just got rid of the WK4 in your file name. Because think about it logically, you've got week 4, project 4. Just PJ4, RK _ PJ4. I don't think you need all these, the 4 here. Okay, so for your drawing, I'm trying to be precise about this. So so your right vanishing point is here, and it's really kind of too close to the composition so that it makes for a wide camera. And you chose to put this one more off to the left, which kind of saves the composition, because if it would have been anywhere closer, you would have a really wide camera lens. So I think the only thing that really could have improved this was keeping this vanishing point on the right at least over here. I think you've got the right idea. The composition looks okay. These lines look really hairy here. I would have preferred if you just kind of studied this arch as a perfect circle and then kind of got the lines a little, and again, zoom tool is not doing me a favor here, but it's just to study this with a more of a careful line. And then once you're confident with it, then kind of bring the line a little heavy. Same thing with these arches too. So set up your geometry, look for the perfect circle, find the center, and keep all those lines in there, right? And then find the diagonals, and then find the arch itself. And once you're confident with it, strike it a little more, and then you can copy this arch for the back side. Because I think that these lines just look a little hairy. I understand you might be using like a more heavy or hairier line for the trees because you don't want to draw a million little leaves in there. So I think it looks okay here, but it's a little scrappy looking when you try to do it for architectural features. All right, thank you, Ryan. All right, anybody else that just uploaded? Anybody else uploaded? Okay, so let me backwards here. All right, so remember, go do this animation show of shows thing, do it right now. Take your 10-minute break. Sign up for the animation show of shows, even if you're not going to go tomorrow night, just so Paul knows that there are students in there. I wanted to do a couple of things. I'm going to direct you to where I have a handout for you, and I'm going to show you where that is. I'm going to explain what it is and how to use it, and then what to do with it. The first thing I wanted to do is navigate you towards, well, let me do it this way. It's a little more logical. From the announcements area of our class, remember that right here on the Pinterest board, this is my storyboard board. This is the one that you all can see. And I was just kind of transfixed with this drawing this morning, just because it's everything that we just talked about with that little cube, where the character's coat is just drawn in with a nice gray, blue-gray, and that automatically sets her apart from the background, creating a focal point. The lines on her coat then become a little heavier, creating the focal point. And then everything else is just diminished. Everything else is just really lightly sketched in there. And it's really wonderful. The lines in the umbrella are very light, but you can see them. You can see that the artist wasn't struggling with them, and it's just really nice of the efficiency of line, the contrast, creating a focal point, not to mention that this young girl has just the biggest umbrella you've ever seen. I mean, just kind of look at it, but it's a wonderful drawing. All right, so I just wanted to share that with you. And then, so let me just jump over to the storyboard board. And we're going to start animals today. So I put a couple of dog drawings in there. This one that I put in here was just reminding everyone that Guillermo del Toro is directing Pinocchio in stop motion. And it's just going to be a crazy, crazy movie. It's due out next year, as long as they stay on production schedule with it. This I thought was interesting just because it is a simple drawing that just has some color added to it. And you can kind of see that the watercolors kind of crinkled the paper a little bit, but that's okay. You know, the artist didn't try to get rid of that in Photoshop too much. but there's just a really wonderful narrative going on in there. And I think that I love all the lines of action within really this character and in the tree itself. As we go through the rest of the semester, one of the hardest things to do is caricature. It's just one of the hardest things to do. And this is just reminding you that as soon as you click on any one of these, that it just creates a whole bunch of stuff that is trending on that, whatever they coded behind it, sketch, caricature. You're going to get all the Three Stooges. And then I put the three-dimensional, the actual sculpts in here this week, just reminding everyone that everything you draw should have a three-dimensional quality to it. So all this stuff right here is new. And we will mention it at least a couple of dozen times, if not more, in this class about straights against curves. And so this drawing right here, done by Steven Silver, is utilizing the theory, the principle of straight against curves to the nth degree. And when you click on this, it'll trend, just everything that comes up is like straight against curves. Everything that comes up, straight against curves, round. It's like, so, and remember that that's like the beauty of this Pinterest, is that it trends like that. So let me go back to the other one. All right, so the other thing I wanted to do was kind of just start talking about bean shapes. We're gonna talk about that here a little bit more exclusively as I get past the intro to my handout. But I think that it's interesting to see this little drawing here where you've got the same kind of bean shape, but then 8 different interpretations of the character's facial design just off that same shape. Very, very interesting, very interesting. And in my playbook, whenever you draw a design or redesign the characters from the Wizard of Oz, the set of characters that you come up with, it's always about the lion. Pay more attention to the lion than any of the other characters, and you're in a better place. Just remember that for the rest of your lives. This is Scotty Young, I believe, and Scotty Young is crazy. The guy is like, everything he touches just turns into platinum and gold. Everything he draws, everything. I mean, this is more of his illustration stuff. And then once you find a drawing, click on it, and then it'll trend towards his pencil work, which he always, oh, what the heck happened there? That was weird. It took me to Walmart. And then he does all his pen work with a paintbrush. He uses India ink with a paintbrush. So remember, and so once I mentioned that, remember that you should all still be finalizing the thing that you love to draw with the most, and whether it's a pencil, 2B, 3B, 4B, what size of the lead you have. I mean, it makes a big difference. Whether you like drawing with colored pencil and then moving into something that is more softer graphite, or whether you want to do something with paint. You know, it's a step in the process. What kind of paper are you drawing on? Again, I think the disadvantage of drawing digitally is that you only have a couple of pens, you only have a couple of pencils, and you don't get the tactile feedback from really rough paper or really smooth bond. So I would always encourage you to keep drawing on paper. And then having said that, for those of you who are still kind of keyed in on it, think about what you're drawing on. So you've got the paper, but are you drawing on a pad of paper like I have in my hands right here? And therefore, I'm just drawing on 50 sheets of paper. Or do you take that piece of paper off and draw on a really hard surface underneath it? It changes your line weight. It changes the quality, the aesthetics of your line. Okay, I'm going through my notes. Okay, so this little mini lecture here is about process. If I look at any of these drawings, whether they're Scotty Young's or any other artist, and again, over the last couple of weeks, I've been kind of rounding out my notes for who I think are the go-to character designers that should be influencing you, or you, that there is a process. That these artists are really good at what they do. They can just, jump in there and start the blue line because they have a really good idea of what the drawing is going to be like before they even start it. All right, so having said that, let me show you the other things here that I have queued up. We're going to start animals. And so I think I just brought up this series of rhino drawings, or this rhino drawing right here. The lines are great. I really love the sketch quality of the lines. It's a heavy animal, so that you're not going to get into trouble if you follow my advice about putting heavier lines on the bottom and heavier lines on any part that's up and closer to the camera. Also, rhinos are dinosaurs, man. Oh, all of a sudden I turned into Big Lebowski. Wow, man. I should be smoking a doobie. You almost can't go wrong with the anatomy just because there's so many weird shapes. I mean, the facial features that can be 1, 2, sometimes 3 horns. It's important to get the eye in the right place. But that would be my suggestion, is for one of your animals, try a rhino. When I was doing my animals for my major all those years ago, it's like, rhinos, yeah, and I just got stuck on them. My teacher's like, okay, Billy, you can stop drawing rhinos now. It's like you almost can't go wrong. All right, and then what did I have here? Oh, this was a good place to start. Let me see what this one was. Oh yeah. Wait, stop. Okay, so I like this. I'm just gonna do a structural thing for you here on this particular drawing. And I like it, but there's also some things I want to warn you about, and that is the following. So I like the fact that the artist is swinging a line for the head, but you can tell that the artist is only doing it once. And I think that it would be better if the artist kind of like tried to find the shape by, striking it a couple of different times rather than just go, trying to hit it once. Also, the line of action is missing. It's totally missing. I think that this artist might be really good at what they're doing and they don't tactically need it, but for you, the line of action is missing. I love that they're doing the double volume here for the torso and the butt and connecting it like it's a bean shape. And then again, we talk about these bean shapes. And we go back to this one and, oh, we can't do that. And you can see the ones that are trending below it too, that there's lots of places where there's a bean. And so just keep that in mind. Many of your characters start with a bean. All right, once again, I like the quality of these digital sketches. I like the idea that there is a bean in there. There's lots of them on the page. The artist is studying it. And they haven't gone in and done the expressions yet, but they're just studying the poses for that character. All right, everyone okay? All right, so let me jump over to this. This is the handout that I just, I placed it in the announcements section today. So the first thing that I need to talk about this is the way it's laid out. Drawing is always a process. There are a few artists out there who've been drawing for decades who can simply just start by drawing the contour. They can skip the first 9 steps. Now these steps here, this is not just me as an instructor. This is 3 or 4 different instructors that I've worked with over the years, a whole bunch of different textbooks, a whole bunch of visiting artists that I've had come into my classroom, and I've just kind of put these all together. Basically, if you look at the the upper left here, atelier is the French word for studio. And I want to emphasize that because you're studying it. Anything that you're drawing for animals or people really is following the relative process for figure drawing. So, and we are going to do figure drawing in the class here. We're going to do it in a similar fashion that we are going to do our animals with. Let's start on the left. The first thing you want to talk about is the design. Just 1A is the design. And then 1B is blocking it in. And then 2 is adding a little bit of value to it, and then form. And so I want to break that apart. So in the design, the first thing that you want to do is imagine what the drawing is going to look like before you even start. And this sometimes is the hardest thing for a beginning artist because you're not experienced enough. You haven't drawn a rhino. You don't know quite how big it is. So sometimes the little trick to get yourself to imagine what the drawing is going to look like before you even start is to either imagine the little box on the page that it's going to fit in. And so that you can go, okay, here's my rhino. There's the head, there's the body, there's the feet, there's the ears, there's the feet, there's the tail. So this little box here sometimes is a nice little shortcut for you. Sometimes if you don't want these lines to interfere with your object, you can just draw the little crosshairs that make up that box. And then you can get the rhino to work it. So there's the head, there's the eye, there's the upper, his back, there's his butt, you know, there's his feet. So you're kind of just laying it out, you're sketching it out. Sometimes if you're drawing with paper and pencil, and again, the zoom thing is giving me just a really strong green line, is to just draw this rectangle very, very lightly. And then draw in a shape for the head, and then the line of action for the body, the whole bean shape for the body, whatever that head's going to look like. And then you're paying attention to the box that you use to compose your drawing. And then at the very end, you can strike the box so it becomes kind of like this interior frame. And you've seen this. This is how the artists work. That's how they think. And so especially comic book artists will do this, where they're drawing a panel. And so they'll draw this box to compose in on their larger paper. And then sometimes they like it. So they'll just keep that in there, and they might even do a little artistic thing in there where they take just a bunch of parallel lines and just give themselves a nice little frame for the composition. But that's a nice little trick for imagining what the drawing is going to look like before it's done. All right, so planning. You know, what is your scale? You have your head, you have the bean shape for the head, you have a bean shape for the body, you have a line of action for the body, and you're defining it just by planning on where those shapes are going to overlap. What are you thinking? If you're thinking about design, are you designing something from your own imagination, or are you going to be using the golden proportion, the golden mean? That's something to think about here. I don't think that you can pass on this point if you are designing a character on your own. All right, so define the plane of the picture. So what does this mean? Does it have a background? Is there a horizon? Is it just living in this space all by itself? All right, and then this is the all-important thing right here, establishing the line of action. And anything that we're going to do for our animal studies, that we're going to be doing this for at least 2 weeks, possibly even 3 weeks for animals. We might spend a whole week just on horses. But this becomes extremely important. This line of action thing is well studied in animation, game animation primarily, but It is all important. It is the most absolute important thing you can do when you're studying to learn the power, the force, the weight of a character, is to learn how to define and draw this line of action. Sometimes when you're drawing a character, you have to kind of plan it out. You know, you kind of have to, I'm giving a human character here, and you kind of have to start drawing the head, but then you're going to need to draw the line of action to figure out the rest of the pose. You know, all of a sudden this character is leaning forward because the UFO is pulling them away. And so we will talk about this over and over and over again, at least 100 times in this class. We will talk about the line of action when you're establishing drawing for your characters. All right, I'm going to clear this because I just covered up some words. Again, the line of action is important. All right, so then when you start establishing your head, your line of action, you know, your bean shapes, are they overlapping? All of a sudden you got a cartoon, measure it. You know, look at the size of the head in terms of 1 unit to how big the body is. And all of a sudden you've got a character that's 2 heads tall. So, and again, remember, the only thing I did was put this together. Literally, there are probably 20 different professional artists, all interlined, interspersed in this series of steps here. So once you're measuring, you're still measuring it in this rough form. You're still measuring it by heads tall. Are the shapes overlapping? Oh, there's 2 heads tall. You know, it might not look like a rhinoceros if you give the rhinoceros really skinny, long legs. You know what I mean? It's going to start looking like a weird dog all of a sudden. All right. So then the next step is important when you're blocking in, is that you should have a file at home. I'm going to navigate away from this here for just a moment, just to show you what my reference files look like. So my reference files look like this, and they're stolen from the internet. And I'm going to just click on this, and can you see that come up? No one's talking to me. Can you see this?
Yeah, Professor.
You can see
Yeah,
it.
we can
Okay.
see it.
So what I have is a folder here that just has thousands and thousands of images in it. They're not mine. I stole them. And so I'm just looking at these. Oh, you know, and I should at one point maybe go back through and arrange them a little more carefully, but they're just random. You know, they're things I found, just drawings I like, something that catches my eye, some characterization. You know, there's just tons of really great stuff in there. And a lot of times I think that because it's random, is that what I'll do is I'll be looking for something that's Tim Burton-esque or something that Sarah Mansinga might have done. And I'll just kind of throw all these in that one folder. And this is pre-Pinterest. So I'm not sure if I've added anything in the last 3 years to that folder. All right, so if you're following along here, you can still see my sheet. We're talking about step number 6 is attaching references. Go and do your reference. All right, so that any time here in your process of drawing, you might have a feedback loop. So once you start looking at your reference images, you might change the way you measure it. You might change your line of action. You might go all the way back and just change the drawing completely. So that means that by the time you start looking at references, you should be imagining what it looks like, planning it, defining the shape, establishing the line of action, measuring it, and then looking and see if you find any other inspiration in about 15 to 20 seconds. So if you're going through this process, you're already, if it's 20 seconds, you're already here. Blocking in the volumes, it's literally saying, okay, now you're going to refine the shapes a little more. You're going to draw the line of action. Where are your shapes overlapping? Where are your volumes? And then all of a sudden you realize that when you're blocking in these volumes and forms, you're still only about 25 or 30 seconds. So this is just being really precise. This is almost like you say, science is the act of discovery. And you're going to say, in science, you say, what is that thing that I'm looking at? And the inquiry is asking the questions about what it is you're looking at and answering the questions about how did that thing that I'm looking at come to happen? And science for anything, for anthropology, geology, biology, any form of science, physics, how does that stuff happen? The idea is inquiry, and you're using the same logic of inquiry here. If you're following these steps and being precise about these steps, it'll improve what you're doing. If you have any worries about what you're doing, anything that's not quite confident, and you follow these, then the artistic inquiry here will help you immensely. All right, so then when you start this blocking out phase right here, you're going to go into laying out the parts. And so you might want to use a separate sheet of paper. You might want to redraw it in another space. And so this then becomes a 2-minute observation here. Once you get to the idea of laying it out and you're still drawing lightly and you're still drawing through the shapes, that means you're getting shapes to overlap and you're looking at the good silhouette. You're about halfway through your process here, and you're only about total of 2 minutes into the drawing. This is a feedback loop. Drawing number 9 is recheck. So a lot of times what you can do here is turn your paper upside down, step back from your drawing and turn your head and look at it. You can look at me in the monitor. That's what you're doing. You're kind of trying to get a look at it. When you're doing life drawing and you hold your pencil out like this, you're measuring and you're turning your head to make sure that you're getting a clear view of it. This is really quick. So you're only at 2.5 minutes here. Everyone okay? All right, so, and yeah, I tried to make this, and I've been using this sheet here for 15 years. So it's not like anybody could say, hey, that's wrong, Mr. Billy. All right, and then contour our lines. And the darker lines, the heavier ones should be on the bottom. Just like we talked about here, the darker or heavier line should be on the bottom or whatever part is in front. And so, now you're starting to talk about the value a little bit. You're like getting ahead of yourself just a little bit. But as soon as you start doing that, check. Turn your drawings upside down. Turn them backwards against the light. Turn them, if you have a Macintosh, I don't think this works on the screen. Does this show up on the screen for Zoom? Can you see what I'm doing?
We can see it.
Yeah.
So you can see I'm turning it into Halloween mode. So this is excellent. So Mac people have this advantage where they can just turn the contrast. They can invert the display and go, oh yeah, my contrast is off because I didn't mean it to be like that. So that's another thing that you can put in there if you have a Mac. I don't think you can do it on an iPad because you need Control, Option, Command, and the number 8 to do that. I use it all the time. It's brilliant. Okay, so then step number 12 here is building up your contour lines, figuring out what you want to be strong, what you want to be less strong or not quite as strong within the drawing itself. And then you're kind of starting to think about your light source and your value. You're starting to think about where the light is upper left or upper right, and you're talking about chiaroscuro, represent your light source. This part here goes fast because then you're thinking of shading or fixing contour lines, rendering your deep blacks. This might take a little bit of moment here, but this step number 16 is really fun. That's where you're convinced about the drawing And you know that you want these deep blacks. So you go reach for your charcoal set, or you grab a paintbrush with your India ink and you just go for it. You know, this step number 16 can be really fun, but there are very few artists. Like when you see Scotty Young draw, he does he starts at like step number 10. He does the contour drawings in blue. And then as soon as he's done, he goes straight to rendering. The guy's incredible. It's just crazy. This is the thing that I've been talking about for a couple of different times, is the squint test, where you just kind of squint your eyes at it and take about half of the light away so that you're getting a different impression of it, so that you can, this is your drawing, and it's very, very difficult to critique your own drawing. But this is a great test to whether it's working or not. Step back from it, turn your head, squint at it, do everything you can to pretend that this is not your drawing. Do everything you can to pretend that this is not your drawing. All right. I put in step number 8 there. Hold on one second here. I got something strange happening. That to stop. A lot of times if you're drawing with watercolor, charcoal, graphite all together, I put a step in here where you know you're getting close to the end when you're spray fixing it. You know, you're archiving it. One of the things that you know when you're really done with a drawing is if you sign it and put the date on it. Once you've signed a drawing and put the date on it, then you know you're done. And then here we go, repeat. Step number 20 is go on to the next drawing. Don't stop, just go straight on to the next drawing, right? It's better to be more confident than you become, the more you can skip the steps here. So that I put in here as number 21 is a magical number. That the better, the more confident you become at your drawings. Oh, I just realized something strange happened with Zoom. Okay, so I'm gonna share the screen again, and I hope I can find this. I had the little mini video open earlier. Let's see if I can just kind of find it. Okay, I don't want to show that to you yet. So what I had was, oh, you know what? I think it was on Imgur. Imgur. Let me see if I can just do this on YouTube. I haven't tried this before. I was looking at some things that Scotty Young was actually drawing, and the presentation was just really nice. All right, let's take a look at this one.
Hey, what's up?
All right, hold on, wait, hold on, stop. I realized something, hold on. If I let that play, it would not let me. You saw him fix it. You saw him draw with blue pencil and he's drawing very lightly. You did not see him draw the line of action. That pose for that tank girl is pretty stiff. You know, she's blasting the ground with her blasters, and those are pretty straight lines. So there wasn't a lot of movement in the character, but he knew that. I mean, he knew that that's what he was going for. So, you know, according to my sheet, you're looking at an artist who is definitely got the line of action in their head, and they're just, it's already there. They don't have to do anything with it. All right. So keep that in mind. I'm going to go on to the next little demo for you here, and this is describing what I would like for your homework. And it's going to be animals. Just make a note to yourself. It's going to be animals. And I did a layout thing here for you. All right, so let me just bring this up for you. All right, so I am going to, I have Harmony already open. Oops. All right, so what I would like, and what I'm going to do on this frame right here is just kind of outline, and hopefully the recording is working this time. But for next week, in addition to your sketchbook drawings, I want 10 drawings of animals. So I'm just going to put that little 10D right there. 5 of those drawings are going to be on this side. And 5 of them are going to be over here. And we'll see how this works. This is the first time for me trying this. So, and once again, these are just the general directions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about building your character. And so this means the first bunch of steps in this figure drawing step by step. So we're talking about imagining, drawing a little box, establishing the line of action for step 4, measuring, remeasuring, erasing, blocking in. So that means that's what building means. All right, everyone okay? I got myself in precision mode. How do I get out of this? All right, there we go. I'm still in precision mode. Get me out of this. All right, good. Okay, this includes the geometry. It includes the line of action. It includes the blocking in. It includes all the construction. You know, I want to see all those lines. Construction. I will be able to tell if you're measuring or not. Okay, and proportion. It's weird, my Zoom window is killing my memory. Okay, that's, so all of these first 5 drawings of animals are just the animal. And with the underlying set of directions is to be accurate. And now I know you're not going to be able to go to the zoo. I know you're not going to be able to go to a friend's house and they have an emu in the backyard. And for whatever it's worth, sometimes going to the zoo is not always the best because sometimes you're just a little too far away. Sometimes the animals aren't moving around enough. You know, it would be really great if there was a cheetah taking down a rabbit, you know, that'd be really great, you know, gesture drawing. You're like, whoa, you know, you just get that cheetah, you know, it would be, but that doesn't happen all the time at the zoo. When they feed the lions, it's like, it's a crazy, wonderful thing, but it's more noisy and messy than it is getting in the right place and being, having an artistic point of view on what your drawing looks like. So what I'm looking for is accuracy here in these animals for the first 5 drawings. And then hopefully, what my intention here is that these drawings are then exaggerated. So you take the first drawing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and what I would recommend is different animals for each one of these 5 animals, and then take that same pose and exaggerate it. All right, I mean, it's technically, literally just that simple. Here's an example. So what I'm going to do is, and this is like the one of the ways to do it, is that you saw that I had, come on, little computer. You saw that I had the rhino. So there's a problem here if I were to try to draw the drawing of the rhino, because then you're taking a Xerox of a Xerox. Now you can have this open because maybe you like the quality of the lines, and you might like the little way that the artist has taken the little line here and created a little shading and all that. But the best thing you can do is just go to a search window and put in rhino. And switch it to images, and then just find one that's a good pose. You know, so what I'm looking for is that even in the pose, there's a good composition. You know, I like this little baby rhino. Might be kind of hard to pull off without the little horn on it though. You know, this front view, it's hard to draw in the front view because everything is foreshortened. The side view is great, you know, but it's not the best drawing. So you want to try to find a drawing that's more in a 3/4. So you can see all 4 legs. So, you know, so this one's working. Now it used to be that Google, the image search would trend for you, but it doesn't trend as well as it used to. They changed the algorithm a little bit. So maybe I'll just try it. See what I'm just going to click on this one. And it's showing me the one that I've got listed already. These guys are running. But the problem with this is that if you try to draw these little lines in here, it might end up looking like a zebra. So be careful with that one. Again, you're trying to imagine what the drawing's going to look like before you even start. Let's look at this one. It's a good pose. It's not the best pose. You know, this is dramatic. It's the camera's nice and close to it, but it's more towards the front view. Let's take a look at this one. And now I'm kind of looking at it going, okay, so this one is starting to work okay. It is, I'm just going to analyze this. It's a photograph and someone's taken it into Photoshop and just killed the background. And they put an alpha channel on it. So it's probably a Targa. It's not JPEG anymore. And then they put in a fake drop shadow that someone might be able to use this as clip art or something like that. And it might belong to like the World Wildlife Foundation or something, but this one's okay. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to kind of look at the structure here. I'm going to see that if the head has a certain kind of volume that makes up the skull without looking at a rhino skeleton, what kind of the volume for the backbone and the rib cage. And I could see a great big volume right here and another one for the massive trapezius on this guy, right? And then the legs have their volume too. So I'm just going to tab back over to Harmony, and then I'm going to go back and forth. So I'm looking at, this is a square, right? This is a perfect square that this guy is in right here. And the head is in the right half of that square. So I'm just going to pick a color to draw with here. And I'm going to draw the volume just lightly for the head. And once I strike this first line, everything about what I'm going to be representing here is already set in place. That means that the head of the snout is going to be about right here. And then if I look at this, this whole head is almost doubled for the whole upper part of his trapezius. And it's really good if you can kind of make little marks for yourself. There's a little direction there. It's kind of the line of action for his head. You might even be able to get a little swing in there, a little S-shaped line of action. And then go back and look at it. There's a great big volume for the body shape, but how, how big is the head to the body? And the body is not really just a sphere, it's a bean. So once again, we're gonna just talk about the little bean shape. And we're gonna make sure that we're getting the proportion close. All right, so then I'm seeing a swing right down the middle of this guy. So I see a line of action like this, and then I see another one for, again, his upper trapezius and his snout. And then I'm gonna see a nice volume right here for his right front leg. And then I see that there's a nice swing of a line of action that's describing the upper and lower part of his leg right there. Then I'm paying attention to how far away these two lines are apart from each other. So I can see that the line of action for his leg is right down the middle almost. And then this line, how far apart are they from each other? Am I off before I even start? So, it's one of the things that you want to kind of correct as you're sketching this guy out. So I'm looking at the volumes, then I can see that this is a little closer. Go back, and I think I'm pretty close. One of the things about drawing in Toon Boom is that you can always change the color of this line for every place it's on your page. It's a really great tool. All right, then I'm going to look at perspective. So I'm going to imagine that there is a square or a rectangle that this guy, this little rhino, is standing on, whether it's a square or a rectangle. So I'm going to build that in there. I'm going to see that there's a lot of space in the back, but I can see that there's a rectangle that looks about like that. So I can see that there's a vanishing point way over there and another vanishing point way over there. I would like to see these lines in your drawing. That the animal you've chosen is standing on his rectangle, standing on her rectangle. Right, and this is one of the reasons why rhinos are good, is because they got all kinds of crazy and wild shapes in there. All right, so let's start with the thing that's in front here. So because I've drawn lightly, I'm going to see that the head should actually be down a little bit more. And it's almost touching the ground right here. And it is definitely this kind of shape. It looks like it gets a little wider towards where the top of the skull might be. All right, again, I'm just sketching it in. All right. In this drawing, I can't see the tail, right? They do have this little tail. I can't see it. I'm looking at the attack from his right rear leg and his left rear leg, and it's getting pretty close. All right, so then I'm going to start looking at where his eye is. So it's more than halfway through. And so one of the things you can do here is you can start describing this as a three-dimensional form. You could actually put the little thing here that makes the contact position for his eye. You could do the same thing for his snout, his little nose. You could draw two little spheres down here. This is a bean shape, and so beans have the three-dimensional quality like this. And here's that thing that comes back to play where we're drawing perfect circles that have a three-dimensional quality to them. Do the same thing for his shoulder, which is right here. So then you got a volume for the upper head, a volume for the shoulder, a volume for this upper and lower bean shape, and then see how they line up. This is your line of action. And see if that matches. See if that swing is correct. So, we're getting it pretty close. So this is why I want you analyzing these animal drawings. Don't trace. Remember, we talked about the idea of getting better by tracing. Don't trace. This time, don't trace. All right, so what I'm looking at now is I'm looking at scrubbing in the parts that are closest to us. He's got a nice little horn right here, and then another one right here. And does this line match up with his eye? Let's see. It's like, oh, look at that. This part of the horn matches up with his eye. And then it's also got a three-dimensional quality to it. So it's a cone. And this is a cone as well. All right. Oops. I went to the whole web page, which is just fine with me. All right, let's do his ears. So this ear is breaking the silhouette. And so let's take a look at what this negative shape looks like right here. So this negative space has that kind of look to it. And then his ear comes up here. Let's block it in. And then this one is right there. And so so you can kind of see how it's lined up, right? All right, so let's take a look at how his head connects to his shoulders. And there's a relatively straight line right here. And then a massive, just huge, massive trapezius that comes up and breaks. All right, and then his feet are really wide, but look at this, there's a outside curve and an inside curve. And so from the volume outside to inside, now what I mean by outside to inside is that there's a bunch of bones in there. He's probably got a humerus and a tibia and fibia that are inside his feet bones that go to probably metatarsals, metacarpals in the front, metacarpals in the back. So, and there's probably a, I can't think of the shoulder blade bone. But, you know, those are bones in there. So when we're looking at the outside form of something, I'm always going to think about this is an outside curve to the bone. And then this is an inside curve to the bone. This is an outside curve to the bone. And it continues this is an outside curve to the bone and continues all the way down to his little paws, his little rhino paws. And they're big. Outside curve, inside curve. And then this is an outside curve to the bone. Look at this negative space from his little chin and the left front foot, which we can barely see right there. So that negative space right there is this little triangular shape. And I'm going to go back and look at, I got it, it's fairly close. And then I'm just going to put that little foot like right there. How does the neck connect? These shapes overlap each other. So there's a line here for his little chin. There's another one here for what would be his neck. And then this shape right here, this flows right into his left front foot. And you can see that there's like a plate there. It's like a three-dimensional plate. All right, so you see, come on, Mr. Computer. All right, so this is the best way to study just using a photograph. All right, and then the other cool thing about the rhino itself is that because he's so ancient, and to me, I think this is kind of weird if I squint at this, he's a cow, right? This is huge, it's just massive. But just looking at this, I'm gonna those back legs are really skinny. So when I come in here, that back leg is here. Again, this is the thing that's driving the performance of the pose, is this rectangle in perspective that he's standing on. And I could throw a little tail in there just because I want that tail. But the other thing that I'm going to look for is the negative space between these back legs. It's a triangular shape. There's definitely a knee. And my drawing might be a little small. Make it a little bigger. So I can see that he's got a knee joint in there. All right, so then as I study this, I'm looking at it and I think that it's okay, but I'm also seeing that if I were to measure from like the width of his head right here and just go, this is 1 unit, 2, 3.5 units. So if I take this measurement right here and I just copy it, so that's 1, 2, 3, this might be a little big from my drawing. I might need to trim off a little bit of his butt because I think I made it just a little bit too much volume back there. And all of a sudden my Toon Boom is not performing as well as I would like. Oh, look how far it's lagging. And it's fine. Erasing is fine. Erasing is a part of our step. All right, let me let my RAM catch up with itself here. And then the other thing that I might do is abandon this altogether. It's just take this drawing and going back to Harmony and just going, okay, I like this, but I might just go on to another level here and redraw the whole thing so the proportions are just a little bit more accurate, and so on and so forth. All right, is everyone okay with this idea? So 5 different animals. And then the challenging thing for you then is the next step of going and putting in the details, but that's going to be fun. As long as you've got the attack on the actual volumes, thinking about where his bony landmarks are, thinking about he's got a spine, thinking about the bones in his legs, what the shape of his skull looks like, all of that fun stuff, all of it. It will show in your drawing. Oops, I'm still erasing. I think I've completely run out of memory now. Save this just to see what happens. All right, and so the other thing that I wanted to mention here was that as you get the construction of this drawing worked out, this kind of a drawing is fine right here, where you're thinking about what your weighted parts look like. You're not really doing anything more than studying the volume, the line of action, the pose. You do not have to copy and paste the image that you used from reference. You don't have to do that. We'll just be able to look at this in terms of a drawing all by itself. Does it look like a flamingo? You know, you can draw any kind of animal that you want. All right, just like last week, I'm expecting my doorbell to ring. Okay, so then you can do this. This is the second part of the assignment. So for this, you can handle this a couple of different ways, the exaggerated part of this. So in doing the exaggerated part, it might make sense to you to just highlight your drawing, move it over. And there's a couple of different ways of handling this. So I'm going to copy and paste this. And I'm going to move it over here. And I'm going to let it think for a second. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to delete it. I'm going to put it on its own layer so that I can treat it differently. And it'll paste in place. And I can leave it there and I can even make a new layer on top of this. Just taking advantage of the act of digital. And then just kind of going in here and exaggerating it. And so this is the way to exaggerate drawings for animation. I'm going to create a new color here. I'm going to make it a little darker, just to make it different. Maybe even a different hue. Something like that. That's good. All right. So now back on the main stage with my pencil. And again, I think that if you're doing this just traditional pencil on paper, you can trace this. You can put a piece of paper on top of it and just flip back and forth. There's a number of different ways that you can do this, but here's the approach, is that I'm starting a new drawing here and I want to exaggerate it. So in order to exaggerate, we exaggerate the things we started with first. So I'm going to make his head bigger, right? And I'm going to go back into this color and I'm going to kill the alpha a little bit so that it shows up more like a rough color. And I'm going to exaggerate the line of action here. I'm going to exaggerate the whole performance of his face. So I'm going to make the top of his head bigger. I'm going to make these ears bigger. You know, in this image here, we can't see this ear. It's not breaking the silhouette, but all of a sudden it is now. You know, now he's got big ears, right? So now we're going to just give him big ears. I'm also going to think about that eye. So in this eye, we've got a circle and then a almond shape across the circle. And maybe I'm going to give him more of a cartoon eye. So I'm going to give him a bigger eye. And maybe I'm just going to make him a little bit more cartoony. And then just to make him dangerous, I'm going to make this horn bigger. And I'm going to make this one bigger as well. Just a lot bigger. Look at his lips, and there's like a little curl in there. So I'm going to put that little curl and exaggerate it. All right, so then the other thing I'm going to do here is exaggerate straight against curves. So I'm going to look for wherever in the drawing I can draw a straight line and a curved line. This is just a stylistic thing. And so if I exaggerate the shape of this body part to be bigger, it's going to conflict with me drawing his head bigger. So one thing I'm going to do here is make his body smaller. So we've just given a different camera on this guy. Maybe I'm going to make this leg a little bigger, but I'm going to think about the overall build. Where are the bones? Where does his foot land? So I've exaggerated the size of that foot just a little bit, going back and looking at the connection between his arm and the roll of skin on top of the, we're going to exaggerate that like crazy. You know, you can see that this line goes all the way up and points at the top here. So let's just copy that, right? It points right at this line right there. All right, so now we're just playing with the forms and exaggerating them. And remember, we had the lines that make up the folds of skin on his neck. There's two big ones. So we can keep them that way. We keep this one here, and then another one right here. And look at where it points. It points to the top of his head. This one points straight up to the top as well. So we put another one in there, just studying the folds of skin. Straight, curved, straight, straight, curved. Keep that foot the same. And make us, so, and then at this point, we're gonna look at the little placement of his feet in perspective. Just keep that the same, but maybe we wanna make that, his back feet a little wider so that it helps the performance of the cartoon itself. All right, then we look at the straight quality of the lines in his back. There's like a hump, another hump, that's his spine. And then these lines can be really straight. So we're gonna play with the line going up, the line going up, and then straight out, straight down, curving right into the belly. We see that there's some ribs right here. Again, if we exaggerate that too much, he'll end up looking like a rhino. So let's just do 3 to start with. Again, we want this leg to be a little chubbier. And this one too. So what we did is we kept the performance of the line of action. We didn't have to copy that. What we changed was the volume of his head. We changed the volume of his body by making this part smaller. And it's studying. So then we have the foot here. It looks like, you kind of think about what this shape kind of looks like. It's like a really fat cone. And then there's like his little knuckles. All right, so once you get this idea here in your hand, you can go back and kind of do the performance like you just did on the one that should be more realistic. Because you're studying, you keep studying it. There's a line that's folding right here. There's lines of folds within his ears itself. So, you can pull those lines as you're studying. What does the connection of his ears look like? There's 2 folds right there. There's a fold here, and there's another fold right there. And all of a sudden, Toon Boom has stopped drawing. It ran out of memory. All right, there we go. All right, so do you see what I'm looking at here? All right, I'm going to go back to this right here. So a total of 10 drawings. Pick 5 different animals and build the first set. Oh, 1 second, please. All right, so once again, we're building the geometry. The line of action is all important. I want to see that line of action in your drawings. So let's just I have time to do another example here. So let's pick, I picked a toucan. All right, so once again, you want to get an image of the toucan so that you can see most of him, most of her. And this one's good. I like this one right here. So it's really great. So we have a very gestural beak. So within this one, we're gonna look at what this is. If we draw a square around this image, it's not gonna quite get us there. But if we do a rectangle, a triangle, I mean, can you see my mouse? So I got this triangle working here, right? So I'm gonna just bring that to the stage. I'm gonna draw I'm gonna look at the attack of that angle, and I'm just gonna draw the triangle. Just pretty lightly. And then from the top of the triangle, I'm gonna draw the volume that is his head. And then there's a bean shape. There's a bean shape for this little head and breast part here. So I'm gonna draw a bean shape. And then once again, within the bean, I'm gonna draw the volume here. And I'm gonna draw the 3-dimensional volume for the bean. And then how does this connect? There's another oval shaped here, more of a flat bean right there. So we're just gonna draw like that. I'm gonna study the negative shape of this arc and this arc. And the line of action then is gonna be like this. That's the line of action for his body. And you can feel it. You can feel that line of action right there. You should be able to feel it. So the line of action is often a single curve. Sometimes it's a double curve. It depends on the pose. This is a very simple line of action. There's another completely discrete line of action for his beak, and that beak goes downwards. And that's not quite right there. I wanted it right there. All right, so look at the way the beak connects to the top of his head. And it just it's a big beak. Look at his feet. So the structure of the foot comes off the front part of the volume here and is a conical shape. And the other one is there, but we can't quite see it. And then most birds have big feet. You know, so don't under exaggerate the feet. Most birds have big toes. All right, then just in this example here, we're going to look at the negative space. So there's a inside curve, outside curve, inside curve. Inside, outside, inside. And so I've already exaggerated the beak just a little much, but that's okay. The beak appears to be in the side view here. So what we're going to do is we're going to locate the eye. And the eye is about right there. And then we're going to locate the shape that is the break between the beak and his head. So it's a weird shape right there. So it comes straight down and then it goes backwards. Curves to the shape of the beak itself. It's an outside, inside, and outside curve. And then it rolls into the rest of his beak. So I don't think I need to draw like a huge three-dimensional volume that would be like a sphere for his beak, because his beak is probably shaped like this. You know, if I go look at these other pictures, I can see that the beak is flat. So if I wanted to put like flat qualities in there, I would probably do better by drawing those kind of shapes. It's good to have the volume for the head and the body, and his feathers are flat in the back. And it looks like they're almost tangential to the body, so that there's like a little pinch back here, and then his tail feathers just kind of fit right there. All right, so, and that's close. I think that now I'm gonna like start looking at the coloration in his feathers and the coloration in his beak. And again, I want all this in there. I think in this example, it would probably do best to draw the little tree branch that he's sitting on. All right, and then in this example here, I'm just going to draw this one because this is simple enough. But I'm going to draw for the exaggerated part, I'm going to draw the head and I'm going to draw the body. So I'm going to exaggerate this by pinching this a little smaller than it was in real life. And I'm going to get the body to be a little smaller. See how I'm changing it? And you can tell what I'm going to do. I'm going to make his beak really big. So again, I want the line of action here, and I want the line of action there for his beak. And now I'm going to make his beak really big. Outside to inside to outside curve. And that eye, we're going to make it more of a cartoon eye. And I'm going to exaggerate the shape. No, I'm not going to exaggerate the feet. I'm just going to draw the feet in there. But I can see that picking up from this line of action here, I'm going to draw what we don't see for his main wing, because I don't see the wing, right? It's like all tucked into his body. It's there in this view, but I don't really see it. So I'm just going to give him a wing. And then I'm also going to give him like a giant tail feather. You know, the toucan's tail is small in all these examples. That one doesn't have a beak at all. They're notorious for having really short tail feathers, but in my exaggeration, I'm going to give him a long one. And I'll give him a little branch to sit on again. And then I can kind of figure out, do I want his beak to be even bigger? You know, and it's at this point in the study of the length of the head to the length of the overall beak. And you could say, boy, you know, that's not too much exaggerated there. You know, because the beak is already pretty big. It's just that I made the body a little smaller, and that makes everything just kind of changes the proportions of it just a little bit. All right, and then I think that just studying this, I can see that there's a really cool coloration in the beak. And then, I don't know what they're for, but there's these vertical lines. And the beak, the tip of the beak itself is a different color. And it might be that that's what he's always eating his berries, and that might be the thing that just kind of helps colorize the front of his beak. All right, so once again, we're going to go back to this frame here. And so I'm looking at building the geometry, getting in this line of action, blocking, construction, measuring, and making sure the proportion is correct in this drawing, but then you're exaggerating the measuring and the proportion in these 5 drawings over here. All right, so let's take a look just, let's see what happens when Google just does this for us. So what I did is I just typed in line of action, and I'm going to switch it to images. And you can kind of start to see that there's a bunch of things that are absolute animators go to for studying the line of action. In this example here for Tomcat fighting another cat, each one of these characters has a simple one curve of the arc describing the force of the punch of those 2 characters. In this one, there's a line of action that is a compound curve. And the way of doing this is putting the compound curve through the form for what we think that the character's weight is on it. And you can see in this example that the animators already exaggerated a little bit. So just by magic, that this animal, this human animal, this is the line of action for this pose, but then this would be the exaggeration. So what's one thing that you can do when you're going back and looking at the exaggeration drawing is that you can exaggerate the line of action. You can say, instead of a simple curve right there, I'm going to draw a compound curve, and I'm going to get him doing something different. You know, all of a sudden, his beak is going to open up, and you can be a lot more artistic about it. You can just study the line of action as a whole compound curve. So this is great, just by you know, it's probably trending worldwide because animators always start their pose with a line of action. And no pose is ever drawn without a line of action. If the animator is drawing a line of action for either a storyboard or a layout or a keyframe for 2D animation that will become 3D animation or puppet animation, it's because she can see the line of action, and she's just kind of putting the form already because she doesn't have time. She's just going a little faster. This is an excellent example right here. This is an excellent example. All right, let's take a look at some other ones. So again, I think that what you're looking for in the form itself is like, you know, this is just a bad drawing, but here there's a really nice compound curve. There's 2 separate arcs in here. You know, in the anticipation drawing for that pose, There was one simple backward C-shaped pose. And then he smacked the ground plane with a compound curve. So the more you can understand and work with this line of action, the better everything that you'll do in animation for character design, thumbnails, first pass at storyboards, final boards, layouts, the animation itself. And remember, let me just check and see if we have in the announcements area. Yeah, I didn't put it in there. Oh, I did, the Fluby Newbie. Remember we talked about this already? That was an extensive study and the stuff that was wrong about the line of action in the middle part of that website. So this is interesting if we just want to just look at this. I just told you that the line of action can be a simple shape or it can be a compound shape. But here in this little tutorial, that this person's saying, don't use a compound shape, don't use the S shape. So, you know, everybody's got their own little theory. I think that it's up to you. It's up to your observation. If you're studying life drawing, and we will do that in this class, then you are going to have a line of action that is for the spine, for the main torso. And each arm is going to have its own compound line of action. Each leg is going to have its own compound curve for a line of action. You know, in these, they break it down into a simple study of keeping the gestures very simple. But as soon as you get into the life form itself, each arm has its own line of action. The body, each leg, there could be 5 separate lines of action. If the hand is in a close-up, you could have a line of action for each finger. Dramatic pause. If the hand is really close to the camera, each finger could have its own line of action. All right, let's look at a couple more. I don't know what I'm looking at here. Well, I think that what this example is trying to show us here is that the character is pushing the table away because she doesn't like something that's on the table. And I can see that it's something with a worm in it. Maybe the apple had a worm in it. But this is a really great example of contrasting a left line of action, a force that is moving to the left, by contrasting that with the next pose about the line of action being completely opposite of that. That is the most motion that you can ever get out of 2 character key poses, is by offsetting the line of action. Here's just a very simple example of animated cups, animated faces, and animated coffee cups. And the animator is animating the coffee cup bouncing around by really studying the line of action. All right, are you always sick of me saying the line of action yet? You can be honest. All right, we've had it, Billy. All right, let's look at a couple more examples. I think that this is interesting. It's not quite as accurate as I like, but it's interesting. And it's interesting that I just typed in line of action and it came up all people, but animals have line of action too. They have to. All right, so